Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Niobe Weaver, and she is going to tell us about her near-death experience. Hi, Niobe.
Hi. Hi, Peggy. How are you?
I'm good. My eye was
Yeah.
all swollen
Oh, well,
yesterday. I'm so glad it's better today.
oh my goodness.
Allergy.
Oh,
I'm allergic to ladybugs, and yeah, it looked like
oh
somebody socked me.
no. Not to ladybugs. That's awful. That's awful. So, um, no, I'm happy to be here. This is important. This is important what you're doing. Because this experience is absolutely individual. It is individual to every one of us that has this occur, and then we come back.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you feel about that? Like, why me? Or what thoughts do you have?
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, for me, mine wasn't by surgery, where I was in the hospital or anything like that. Mine was it was an attempted suicide, but I wasn't thinking to take my life. It was not a plan. I wasn't in a space in my head of, oh, I'm so depressed, I just wish I would die. I wasn't having those kind of thoughts. I was a young mother of a 3 and 4-year-old children. I was 29 years old, going to be 30. It was June of 1989. And I was going to be 30 that year in September. And I wound up getting into a marriage with somebody that was, he was an addict. He was a closet addict, and he was a closet bisexual man. We were both divorced, 2 kids, and I really just don't know why we got together in the first place. But I think some of that is that it was, well, can we do what we think we're supposed to do to provide some sort of family for his kids, my kids, all of that. And but I had a very, and my sister and I both, we both had a very dominating mother. And she was oh my goodness, it was, I could not do anything right enough as far as being a parent, as being a mother to my children. She was very critical. So was my father. And so there was, get somebody to take care of you and these kids. But then it was, I could not, in their eyes, it was like I couldn't do anything right as far as a parent. But I knew inside, I knew what I was doing was right. I adored my children. We had a wonderful relationship, and they were little, and my kids, we were in this bonded thing. And I don't know if maybe she was jealous of what she saw, but at any rate, what it was constant criticism, absolute constant criticism of about their haircuts, about their clothes, about what I'm doing, what I'm not doing. And then I'm living with somebody who's being also just basically somewhat just ignoring me, or also just being very critical, or it was just, I was there. And so we had actually gone out fishing one day, and we had a good day. What a concept. And we had a good time. But I had started drinking wine on an empty, not a real empty stomach, but I got inebriated pretty quick, which is unusual for me, because my thing was, my belief system, what I've done when I had children is, okay, it is not, I cannot be in an altered state of any kind if my children need me. So I was, so that was the thing, is I wasn't a drinker. But that day I got drunk on wine. And by the time we got back home, I do remember, I mean, I was sobering up a little bit. And I wasn't stumbling, dropping, falling down drunk, but I was inebriated. And so I had, my one son was with the grandparents and my other child was with me. And this one child, he liked to pick on my oldest child. So that started to happen. And the next thing I knew, I put my child to bed. I came back and I said, hey, was asking, well, what is the deal? Why are you needing to be this way with my child? Well, this man looked at me and he says, why don't you just F off and die? And something happened. Something clicked inside me. Something broke inside me. And I went back in the bathroom and I got 2 full bottles. One was a bottle of pain medication and the other one was a full bottle of muscle relaxers. And I sat down in the living room with a glass of wine and I took both bottles of pills, all of them. And I laid down on the couch and died.
Spur of the moment. Can't straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, not planned at all. And the next thing I recall was I felt myself crash down into my body when I was on the couch. And I heard this voice in my ear, who now I know is Archangel Ariel, whispered in my ear, wake up. And I woke up and I smiled and I said it out loud. I said, I'm alive. And I literally started struggling to live in that moment. I started to vomit, but there wasn't stuff there. But I was like, oh my God, if I get something on the floor, he's going to have an issue, and et cetera. So my legs didn't work. The only part of my body that was working were my arms, my upper arms. I pulled myself off the couch and I crawled on my elbows down the hall to the bathroom to vomit in, but still nothing was coming up because actually everything had been digested. And so that wasn't happening. And so I'm crawling back on my elbows down the hall. And this is when I laid down, it was like 9 o'clock at night. Well, this was like 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the next morning. So let's look at that amount of time. That amount of the medication, the pills are digested. And so I'm crawling down on my elbows and he steps over me. And then he saw the pills on the empty bottles on the coffee table. And that's when he sprung into action. When he tried to pick me up, my legs weren't working. And the next thing I know, I recall being in ICU and they gave me the syrup of Epicac to get something out. And I was like, well, there's nothing there. But I was slurring. I could not I couldn't form sentences. I couldn't speak. I couldn't talk. And it's really unfortunate. What's happening now around the awareness and the presence of suicide and attempted suicide is so important, because this was 1989 when this was something to hide, something to be ashamed of. So I clearly recall being in the ICU. I mean, being in the emergency room, and somebody asked me my name and I tried to say it and I slurred, and she made fun of me. The nurse made fun of me and on the phone. Did you hear that? I remember that. I was made fun of, and I spent 2 days in the ICU, and I got out, and 30 days later, I put my 2 babies in the back of my car and I drove home to Oklahoma. And because I was in California, I drove home to Oklahoma, to where I started healing. I got in a wonderful counselor that was through a domestic violence shelter and program, and I was with her for a year. And And then, but it still has taken me many years to talk about this, because, you know, a near-death experience in any other way, a car accident, surgery, whatever, is acceptable. But because of all these years, suicide's not. Attempting to take your life is not. When I got out of the hospital, one of the wives of his friend came out over and looked at me. She goes, "How could you do that? You have children. How could you do that?" And there was nobody at the door, nobody there to support, but there was one woman, and she showed up, and she was kindness. So this is, I was apprehensive about sharing this with you today, because I haven't shared it out online a lot. And I think it's maybe twice more. So, and I have a cat that is screaming in the background. I hope you can't hear it.
I can't hear it. I've been
Okay,
putting
good.
mine outside the other
She's
side of this door because
Yeah, she really likes to be a part of everything. I mean, she's a part of my healing sessions, to be under the table, on the client, sitting in a chair. So, oh my goodness.
well, mine will
but-
probably be over here where you'll see a tail in front of the screen here in a minute because I forgot to put it back out there. Okay.
So that is, so there was the healing, but here's the thing is, a lot of people have a memory. They're able to remember what happened when they were out of their body. And I didn't clearly remember. I had to get things together, keep it together, and get myself and my children to safety.
Right.
So it was about 3 years later, I had a hypnotherapy session to find out what happened that day. And so as I was out of my body and standing in the living room, there was actually, what occurred first was I was in a sea of absolute living light. It was consciousness itself. It was moving and changing colors, and the vividness and it was the energy of life itself, this living light that is hard to, it's really hard to describe. And then from there, it was, as from this sea of living light, Jesus came and came through into this living light. And then we were standing in the living room where I was on the couch, and our communication was totally nonverbal. And I suddenly saw this old woman appear to me. And there had been, prior to him buying the house, there had been somebody died in the house. And I thought, is this person part of bringing so much turmoil, spirit in the house? But there's this old woman, and gray hair, glasses, and she's looking at me, and she's telling me she's sorry. I am so sorry. And I had to look at her and I said, look at what you've done. But then what I knew what needed to occur I'm sorry for all I did. And I needed to forgive her. When I forgave her, she became energy, and I saw her go into Jeshua's Sacred Heart. And then I looked at him and I said, what do you want me to do? He says, trust it'll be revealed. And that's when I went back in my body.
That's interesting when you said that. It makes me think of a time I was looking in the mirror and talking to God, say, I want you to arrange my marriage. And I was told my only job was to trust, to follow where led. Said, follow God like a leaf follows the wind. And it made me think of when you said that your job was to trust.
Trust, and that's what I've done, and listen and trust. And within a couple of years after that, I moved away from Oklahoma. I moved up to Washington State, where I'm at, and the healing I had, as I call it, I went to dance. I danced around the fire with Wicca for 3 years, and then the Red Road Path, and I had studying the goddess religion was so very healing for me as a woman, and coming to this place of forgiving myself and saying I did not do anything wrong, because I was raised Catholic. And so this was the worst thing you could have possibly done.
Yeah, I hear Wicca and I think witchcraft. Am I wrong?
Right. Yeah. And it's also, we call it earth religion, goddess religion. And actually, Wicca and the goddess faith was a lot of what the ritual that you see and have in Catholicism and in the Catholic Mass, they did draw it in from the goddess earth religions, because in this way, then they could bring the people into church and make the conversions, et cetera, and have their belief systems. But for myself, then it was a journey into finding unity and Center for Spiritual Living. That is where I found, because Unity and Center for Spiritual Living is open to, it is all faiths. There's all paths lead to one. There's truth in all paths. And so I found that in 95, and it's been, and it's, it's still, I wound up becoming a Unity musician. I thought about being a Unity minister, and discovered I already have a ministry with my healing work that came after that. I stepped into being a massage therapist. I'm Reiki master, healing touch practitioner. I'm a sound healer and light language channel. I had a beautiful relationship, a beautiful man come to me in 93, and we had 4 years together, and we went through a spiritual awakening together. And we were in the same room when a friend of mine was doing some energy work, and that everything, our worlds just kind of tilted this way. Light language came through through sacred lovemaking and tantra, and his ability.
Excuse me.
What?
What'd you just say?
What? Light language through tantra? And
no, it's like before that.
Before what?
It's like you said, like light work, love making.
Light language. Well, light language came through our sacred sexuality, through tantra, sacred love. Yeah, that's what I said.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, it is. And because Robin, there was an evening that he started speaking light language to me, and people say, well, isn't light language speaking in tongues? And it is different. It is not speaking in tongues. Way back, I had been to a church, and because I have spiritual, I look out and seek, and I received the gift of speaking in tongues, and I stayed with that for a short time, but it was also it was just too not the tongues, but it's just that form of Christianity for me just was not for me. It was still too very patriarchal, and so then here comes this light language, and there is a difference. When I received speaking in tongues, by this time I'd already been, working with energy, working with massage, and I felt the only chakras that were activated was my third eye and my crown. and maybe the throat a little bit. The main chakras were that. And but with light language, it's all energy centers, it's all chakras that are opened up. And this is the trust. It'll be revealed to you, the step by step, as my my natural intuition from my line on my mother's side awakened with the work I was doing with massage, the Reiki, healing touch, and then this light language. And you're thinking, God, people are going to think I'm nuts. But I trusted, and I put one foot in front of the other. I stepped out and I started speaking about it at metaphysical stores, at large conventions, and at that time, I'm going, oh my God, people are gonna think I'm crazy. But it was, one by one by one, there's other people going, that's occurring for me. This is what's happening for me. And it is a full awakening language of the soul. So, and the trust about that, the language opened up. I started doing sound healing with my clients, and toning and light language. And as I would speak the light language, I get visions and pictures of who you are as a soul, as this incredible individual named Pegi that's here on this planet, and how important it is that you are here just the way you are. You don't have to do anything. It's who you are, and you matter. It's important that you're here exactly the way you are. And so this is what it just started to bloom and blossom into my work, mainly with women, and reflecting their divinity within, reflecting the beauty they are, reflecting to them, this is how your family sees you. This is how you contribute in your community, and helping them learn how to own that, helping them learn how, with their own voice, with their own sounds and their toning, to get into their body, to be able to feel what it's like to be grounded in their body and say, this is me. This is why I'm here. And feel alive, feel proud about why they're here. So the trusting, and it was by 2008. By this time things had blossomed in my practice. Unfortunately, my beloved Robin, he passed away of a brain tumor in 1998. And but my practice continued. I wound up meeting another partner that opened up as far as being a musician and singer. And that's when stepping into Unity Church with the music, and then came speaking. And then things went a little quiet. By 2008, my mother was, June of 2008, my mother was in a facility and was nonverbal by that time.
What was that like? With her being nonverbal, I mean,
that was, she was in dementia, and she was in her world. And so, I hadn't had a conversation with my mother, and she hadn't been really present and cognizant for several months. I had a friend of mine's a nurse practitioner, I said, hey, would you mind coming along with me to do a wellness check? And she said, sure. So we walk in my mother's room. There's an aide helping feed her. And my mother looks at me, she goes, oh, you're here. You're here. The whole room lit up. And she goes, you're here. My daughter, you're here. You're here. And I'm like, oh my God. So the aide left, and she is just, her heart and her soul are just, eyes are just at me. And she says, I'm so glad you're here. And she looked at me and she said, beauty, so much beauty. She says, you got everything you need you have everything you need. Now go out and do it. And then she looked at me and she said, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for all the bad I did. I don't know why I did it. And she's looking at me with these eyes. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for all the bad I did. I don't know why I did it. And then I'm crying. My friend's crying. And then here's what this, and then she does, and this happens I'm so sorry for all the bad I did. I don't know why I didn't. Did you catch that? Yeah. There was an entity attached to my mother. And I think it's through her line because I'm understanding her mother. I didn't really know my grandmother, but that her mother could be mean as a snake. I had seen that once before with my mother. About a few months earlier, she was in the emergency room because they couldn't wake her up at the facility. And I go in around the corner and she's sitting there and her crown chakra was like, wow. And there's this light, and there's this light in her eyes. She's like, wow. And I'm like, whoa. And she's looking at me. I'm sitting there. She's looking over at me, and I'm going, in my mind, I just said to her silently, said, wow, where have you been? And she's smiling, and then it goes. Now, if you've ever had anything totally creep you out, that does. But let's come full circle. It was June of 2008. In June of 1989, when I was out of my body, I spoke to an old woman who looked at me and said, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Can you forgive me? Little did I know that Jeshua was showing me that in 2008, it would be my mother, because I didn't recognize the old lady because she didn't look like that then. But here it was 2008. And there she was. And she went through 3 days of being so happy. And then everything closed off and she died 2 months later.
Makes me think, just sit here listening to you. I don't know what you thought, but why couldn't you done it sooner? I mean, I know she had dementia, but in her life, like, because my mom, I'm wondering if she's ever going to have a good moment like that. And I probably feel like, why didn't you do it a long time ago?
Yeah. And my sister never got that. My brother never got that. She lay there and told me, she says, you were the light of my life. And I'd known that. But things just, and then moving on from there, it's just been, finally there's been sadly there's been so many people, and then people that are people that have like a world, people know them, actors, musicians, that fashion designers taking their lives, that it brought it out of the darkness, that there's people that can be in a state for a long time and they will attempt suicide for whatever reason. And then there's those that achieve it. Then there's those that for illness. And then there's those like me. I never had it cross my mind. It was never my intention. But I was very inebriated. And I had the first time, I don't know how much time have we got, Peggy?
No, anytime you want.
Okay.
All night.
Okay. The first time I came out and told this story was with the practical mystic Maureen Saint Germain. She is an Akashic Records mentor, teacher, divine healer woman in her own right. And I told that it was just time to bring it off of my heart, and was amazed at the response that I got. And then, it's like you and I just right now, we talked about that there was an entity attachment to my mother. Now, for some people, this can be very, okay, it's one thing to be uncomfortable about talking about suicide. It's another thing, attempted suicide. It's another thing now we're talking about entities. But it was, there's none other than that. That's what it was. But Maureen brought an awareness to me, and about, she says, alcohol, she says, Niobe, she says, there can be, she says, we call alcohol spirits. When a lot of people drink alcohol, they become somebody else. They can't handle alcohol. I mean, if you look at what happened with our Native American indigenous people, alcohol was just, they were immediately addicted to it. So she was saying to me, she says, Niobe, she says, you were drinking that day and you were open. You were unusually open that day. And it opened up a space for something to come in and basically take me to a place I wouldn't have gone. The next time I shared my story, the woman that was interviewing me, hosting me, she spoke about that she was at a conference in a hotel room, had a glass of wine, and then all of a sudden there was this pull, there was this draw of go out on the terrace. And she went out on the balcony and it said, now jump. And she said, I was looking over and I knew that if I jumped where the pool, she says, I would be impaled, I would die on the fence around the pool. And she says, Niobe, it took everything I had within myself. She says, I crawled back into the room. I shut the door and I crawled in. She says, because it was this out of nowhere, this energy, this pulling energy that wanted me to jump and take my life.
It makes me think of men that commit domestic violence under the influence.
Mm-hmm.
Is so high. And it makes me think of George Ritchie, popular near-death experiencer. It's now passed. But during his near-death experience, there's a part he talks about, he left his body and he's at a bar and there's spirits there watching these guys drink. Like they want to do this and they can't separate themselves from it because they want to be doing that so bad. And, a lot of people when they drink, because my ex-husband drank a lot, they want to escape. So they want to escape. They're drinking. It makes sense that, something could enter.
Well, I know my father was a drinker. He was an alcoholic. He was a functional alcoholic. But I learned very young, Scotch was a whole different thing. He became somebody else when he drank Scotch. And then that was, don't go there. Don't even bring a bottle home. But that happened one Christmas Eve.
I can't have caffeine.
Really? What happens with caffeine?
I have no filter.
Oh my goodness.
Emotional, angry, mean. Yeah, I cut it off completely.
Oh, God bless. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. My sister was in the hospital here recently. A nurse thought she was being nice and she went down to the cafe and brought up me a nice cup of coffee. I said, I'd love to have it, but I can't. And so she was asking, well, what happens when you drink this? I just don't filter. I just left it at that. But yeah. Now, back when I was young and I would have PMS, I knew I couldn't have it during that week, because it just made my PMS worse, especially if I was hungry. And so I knew there's certain times I couldn't have caffeine. And then after I went through menopause, I thought, well, I can have all the caffeine I want. And I was doing okay. Then all of a sudden here, a few months ago, every time I'd have a cup of coffee or a Pepsi or have coffee in the morning and then Pepsi at lunch, oh my, it was never good. I was mentally ill is what it felt like.
Oh my gosh.
And all I had to do to get my sanity back was not drink caffeine. And I'm like, it's like drinking a cup of mentally ill for me.
Oh my gosh. See, and that's just, it's, well, and it is a stimulant. It alters, it does alter. I gotta watch it because I can get dizzy off of it. And we live in such an incredible, how do I want to say it? Energetic universe of everything, energetic possibilities there. We live in such a sea of energetic possibilities because we fool ourselves by this is solid and the best, or this is our lives, and this is what the smaller part of our mind wants to grab onto, and this is how we live, and that's all there is to it. But when reality, you and I are actually mingling energetically right now. The pixels here and going back and forth energetically, our chakras, our energetic fields, everything is interacting and exchanging right now. Even I don't even know where you are. So
Ohio.
And like I said, I'm in Washington. So and then it's like everything does have an effect. So what are we sensitive to? We don't even know it. And like you said, there is so much domestic violence happens when a man is drinking or a woman.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't drink anymore either. It's just like suddenly I couldn't tolerate it. It's like one drink and you thought I've been drinking all day long. I was falling down, couldn't get up. I mean, it's just like I suddenly got sensitive to everything. And like these podcasts, I'm squinting because the lights just bother my eyes. My eyes are so light sensitive. Just like, like my eyes swell up now from the ladybugs, or before I'd have just the trouble breathing, and, it could get serious if I didn't, stay away from them. If I got, them on me or around them too much, but now it's affecting my skin. I never did that before. A year ago, my eyes swelled practically shut. My whole face was swollen just because I'd walked past some ladybugs is in a windowsill. I don't know, just everything's gotten real sensitive.
Oh my goodness. So this is what my near death was. And it has been a thing of trusting and deepening into moving through any kind of fear of what are people going to think, especially with the light language and sound healing. I mean, it was one thing to be a massage therapist in the 90s into 2000, early 2000s, but in a smaller town, which was a very conservative, had a very much a Christian community. And so it was one thing that, but I had 2 children that were stepping into junior high. I had to think about that. And now it's all over the place. You know, I mean, it's everywhere on the internet. There's people doing light language and everything like that. And my God, I couldn't find anybody. And sound healing and Reiki. I mean, I can recall when the Reiki symbols were sacred. You didn't share them. Now you can wear them in your ears. I mean, Reiki, if you wanted you studied Reiki, you got your first Reiki and you with your master and you practiced for a couple of years and then you would get your next level 2, and you would practice that for a couple of years. But if you wanted a Reiki master, it was 4 years and it was $10,000. And I personally believe there's a good reason for that. Because then you really know what you're doing. It's a commitment. Because in this sea of infinite energetic possibilities and stepping into and putting on the world of healer, there's a lot going on there that you need to be able to discern and ground, be aware of, allow, and not allow.
I see Reiki Master a lot anymore in people's titles. That, yeah.
You can get it on YouTube. You can get a Reiki Master in a weekend. You can get level 1, level 2, and level 3. Yeah. And I went to one of those. Woo! Everybody is just spacey. It is wow. I'm like going, did everybody get home okay? So
What do you mean?
and everybody, I mean, that is a tremendous amount of energetic shift of initiation into your physical, emotional, spiritual, and energetic being. And everybody's high as a blooming kite. You're high on energy. You're high on the Reiki energy. It's like, wow. But it doesn't give you the practice. It doesn't give you the ability to experience and you know, there's a reason people go to med school. There's a reason, you know, people go into anything they go into to get really grounded in what they're offering. And so, but you know, I am a sage woman healer here, and I am going to be, you can say, well, she's just an old crotchety, you know, about the way it's supposed to be. Well, maybe I am, because it's a lot. It's a huge responsibility when you are doing, oh my God. It's a huge responsibility. It's a huge responsibility when someone trusts you to do energy work on them. So
there's so many things out there. Like I say, I'm Southeast Ohio, and so I haven't heard of a lot of this stuff. So I was telling a woman yesterday, it's like, if you did that here where I live, they'd probably burn across your yard. She hung out a sign that said, you know, psychic medium or whatever. Yes, they probably burn across.
Oh God, that's why I left Oklahoma. Well, so how did you get drawn into doing this?
Oh, near-death experiences. And it took me a long time to come out to talk about my near-death experiences. And so I wanted to have a podcast that would help people to come out with theirs, because, you know, when you get in IONS, they want the famous NDEers. And, you know, I was going giving talks and stuff, but I couldn't stop thinking about who I was before, you know, the year before, when I was scared to death to talk and a lot of people weren't given an opportunity to talk. Like, as soon as I submitted a proposal one time to speak at IONS and I was accepted, and a lot of people on my Facebook got mad, said, well, I've tried for years and nobody let me talk. And I didn't realize. And so I thought, I want to give, you know, for everybody, you know, I'll have famous people on, I'll have researchers on, and somebody that's never told their story before on, you know, all the same, just kind of give an equal playing field for everybody. Just whoever wants on, basically they're on. The only ones that's not on is the ones that call me beforehand and want to argue, and then they decide they don't want on. So, whatever. So
Well,
they'll say, well, I don't think we're a very good fit. And I'm like, okay, whatever.
That is a tremendous acknowledgement to be invited by IONS.
Yeah, I was on an NDE panel at IONS. Now there's the IONS and there's IONS.
Yeah, IONS. Yeah.
Okay. I was on NDE panel, and then they invited me back the next year. No, I skipped a year. I didn't submit a proposal the next year. I give somebody else a chance. And so then the following year, the third year, then I submitted a proposal, and I was going to be on another NDE panel, and I backed out. I was realizing that IONS wasn't a good fit for me at that point. So I backed out and declined. And I went and spoke at groups. Went to North Carolina and spoke, in Cincinnati, went to Hawaii. I was supposed to go to Virginia Beach, and David Bennett saw that I was bashing IONS on my Facebook, and he said, well, if you don't like IONS, you need to come down here. So he had invited me. So, but yeah, I was going around speaking and stuff. I was on Dr. Oz once. I talked about my NDE.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So what happened? May I ask, what happened to you?
Oh, why I was there on his is my second NDE. It was when I was 25, and I had an ectopic pregnancy, and I had internal bleeding, a lot of internal bleeding. It's the biggest dual pregnancy the hospital saw. And I went through the tunnel, was in the light, the whole thing. Jesus, God, into the future and back. And I was told it was my time, though. Most people are saying, it's, you know, they're told it's not your time, you got to go back. I was demanding to go back, and I was told no, that it was my time. And then all said and done, I was sent back. But I told Dr. Oz, yes, you know, I passed out in the wheelchair in the emergency room when I first got there, and that's when I died. And during the night, I passed out all night long, but I didn't have any more of an NDE memory. It was just, I knew I was dying. I'd come back too. And but I didn't know that. I passed out all night long. And Dr. Oz told me, he says, every time you passed out, you died. Because he knew the whole medical situation, everything that was going on. Because the next day they did ultrasound, and they found I had internal bleeding filling my entire abdominal cavity clear up to my chest. And they called my family and said she's not going to make it, and I had to sign my organs away individually. And then the doctor went ahead, and I think they thought I died before surgery. I think he thought, what's the sense of prepping for surgery? She's dead. I don't think he knew I was alive. But the night before, he told me I was fine. There was nothing wrong. Well, I knew I wasn't, because I was just in heaven pleading for my life. But I couldn't tell him that, because I was afraid he'd just put me in a psych ward. And I needed him to take me seriously and figure out what was wrong with me medically. And I told him it was a new tubal pregnancy, and he wouldn't believe me, because he had already did an ultrasound. And he said, both babies are in the uterus. Why do you keep saying it's tubal pregnancy? I couldn't tell him, because I was just in heaven. I was dead. And I was told it was my time. I did not think I was going to get to come back. Now I'm back, and you're going to let me die here because you don't believe me? Of course, I couldn't say that. But I just refused to go home. So he said, well, I can let you spend the night if it'd make you feel better, since you live an hour away. He said, I'm telling you, there's nothing wrong with you. And he looked at my husband like, what's wrong with her? And my husband just shrugged shoulders, you know. And so I was in a private room, and all night I would feel this pain in my hip bone. And I'd sit up, and I felt like I was going to throw up. I get my bowl, and I'd wake up, and I had that vomit everywhere except for my bowl. And I knew I was passing out. And then so many times it happened during the night, because the nurse kept having to come and clean me up. She's getting mad at me. Use your bowl. And I said, I think I'm passing out. And then after so many times in the middle of the night, because I said, call the doctor, something's wrong. She's, no, he's asleep. And I'm not calling him in. And then after so many times, I remember so vividly thinking, God, I know you can't keep doing this. You can't keep bringing me back. I said, if you could just keep me alive till morning. I didn't think he could. I said, you just keep me alive till morning. And the doctor, maybe he'll come in and do an ultrasound instead of discharging me, send me home. And then they can find out what's wrong. You know, he says it's not to a pregnancy, but I really feel it is. But if it's not, what is it? Because I had died. I could not dismiss the fact I was just in heaven. You know, I never heard of NDE. I never thought it happened to anybody ever before. And to be there and be pleading with God to send you back to raise your boys, and told the answer is no. And then ultimately I had put my hands up to Jesus, and I said, who else will teach them about you? And I was back in that wheelchair. And it was it would be like someone just said, okay, you are convicted for murder, and you are going to go to the guillotine. And you're right up to the guillotine. And it's like, you know what? We forgive you. Go home. That's what it felt like. That's exactly what it felt like. And then so, like, you know, you're home, you're back, but you know it's not fixed. It's like whatever is medically wrong wasn't, although the pain had stopped until later in the night when I started waking up with the pain in the bottom, then all started back up again. And I thought, I'm going to die here. And plus two, I didn't want to go home and my boys find me dead. I thought, if I'm going to die, I'm going to do it here in the hospital. I don't want my boys finding me dead. So it was traumatic. You know, people say, oh, you had NDE. I was like, do you realize I lost my twins in that near-death experience? And do you realize I know that it was my fault? And people say, oh, you don't use that word fault, and there's no such thing as fault. And it's like, it's my guilt. I'll carry it gladly, because I had my tubes, had tubal ligation, and then I had it reversed. And the doctor told me I'd have a slight chance higher of tubal pregnancy if I had the surgery, 5% chance more. And I got that 5%. And so when I was in heaven, I've like, oh my God. First I was blaming God. Like, I'm not staying here. You can't make me. I got kids to raise. And then ultimately I realized it was my fault, that I died. My twins died, that my sons would be raised without their mother, without my protection. It was completely all my fault. And once I accepted that, then another fear started. What happened? Because I thought, okay, well, I guess, you know, long time from now, my sons, when they're old men, they die, they'll be here too. I'll get to see them. That's how I rationalized it. I said, okay, I accept it. And then I thought, oh no, what if they're so angry because they lost their mother at such a young age that they hate God? And nobody teaches them to be Christian. Nobody teaches them to love God. What if all these things? And then that's why I ended up pleading to Jesus. Who else will teach them about you? What I was wanting was Jesus to tell me, you know, their grandmother or somebody later in life. I want him to show me who was going to teach my kids about him, to make sure they would be back with me someday here in heaven. But instead I was back, and I felt like apparently God thought you're going to be the only one that would teach them. So we better send you back. Like maybe he could see nobody else was going to teach them. Like maybe that would have been the case. I don't know. But that's what it felt like. Like for me to be sent back, I felt like it was my job to teach them. And so the first time I saw the NDE, once we started getting internet and learn how to use it, and I saw NDRF, the Near Death Experience Research Foundation. I hurried and just typed in my story real fast and submit. And I was like, there, I did it. You know, I thought that was it. Like I fulfilled a promise. And I didn't know it was just the beginning that, you know, I was going to start getting involved in IONS and speaking and start my own groups and all that. So, yeah.
That's Yeah, well, you pleaded for and you were definitely meant to be here. I mean, it's like with mine, my God, my children would have gone to my mother.
That's what I was afraid of. Because my husband drank
My
a lot.
children would have gone to my mother. And it was like, oh my God. And so it was yeah, it was for me. I have a remembering of darkness and then blue. There was this blue and then that living light that he formed out of. And it was all just communication, mental communication. And so the interesting thing is though, is that the day that my mother died, I had been with her the night before, and I brought one of my crystal singing bowls the next day to play for her. And as I started to play it, for her, and then I was like going, no, you're complete. And I was sitting there next to her, and I saw this whole space. I saw the tunnel that she was to go into. It was growing and it was growing and it was growing and it was growing. And something inside said, well, I'm going to go to the grocery store, Mom. And I was in the store about an hour. I was coming out and they called me. I was like 10 minutes away. And they said, you better get here now. It's happening. So my belief is that one, she didn't want me there. She wanted to pass. She wanted to go through that transition. She wanted to go into that tunnel by herself. And then it was okay for me to be there. It was okay for me to be there before, but that was something, Peggy, that was unexpected for me, was to witness and see that space open up that was going to be accepting her into her next experience.
Those moments when someone close to you is passing are phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure it's heartbreaking for people that are really close. But yeah, I've experienced things when both my mother-in-laws passed. My first mother-in-law, I was already divorced from their son, and I thought that she was going to be okay. My son said that she was going to be okay, that I could go see her, because I didn't want to go with my ex's family there, big Catholic family. And so I went, and apparently things changed by the time he told me that till I got there. So I was on my way there, and I stopped at Kroger's, and I wanted to get her flowers and a vase and a card. And I could not make up my mind on flowers. I just stood there. I'm like, what's going on? I was feeling something. I started realizing this is more than just can't make up your mind. There's somebody here. And I felt it was my ex-father-in-law saying, don't go yet.
Mm.
And so I thought, well, okay, I'll go ahead and get the flowers here, because I couldn't make a mind for nothing. I'll go ahead and get the flowers, and then I want to go across the street, Dollar General, and get her vase and her card there. Because I would go back over to the card section, clear across the side of the store, can't find nothing. Go back to the flowers, I can't decide. And then I was starting to feel a presence. So I got the flowers, went to Dollar General, got the vase, got the card, got in the car, and my daughter looked at me, and she's like, why aren't you turning the ignition and going? I just sat there, and I said, this is so weird, because usually I thought people would be told, like, hurry and go, like it's going to be their time, like you got to get there. I'm being told the opposite. I'm being told don't go yet, again. And I was like, it was so strong. I was like, I'm going to honor it. I felt I was honoring him, respecting him. And then all of a sudden I felt like, okay, it's time to go. Like something opened up, like a gate, like go. So as soon as I started to go, my son called. He says, Mom, Grandma just passed. And I thought, why am I being told don't go? And, she passed. And then he told me that his dad and all the 12 kids was there, and their spouses and some of the grandchildren. Like, oh, I don't want to walk into the lion's den. And but Pappy, my ex-mother-in-law, he was right there, so strong. You're going. You're going. You're going. I drove and I'm like, I don't want to. I don't want to. I'm going. Out of respect for him, but I don't want to. I got in the elevator. I'm like, oh man, this is the last thing in the world I want to do is see all these people. And elevator opened up and I felt him just before it opened. I felt him and I just knew. It was almost like he took over me. It was that strong at that point. And here, when the elevator opened up, here down the whole hall is all the 12 kids and their spouses lined up. Their mom has just passed, because it only took 5 minutes from the time my son said, Mom, she just passed, to get there and go up the elevator. And all of a sudden I knew what he wanted me to do and I did it. It was like it wasn't even me. And I reached up and the first one I saw was his brother Dennis, and I gave him a big hug. And I said, you had the best mother. You had the best Christian mother, because my mother was very difficult and not Christian. And I was in awe of what a blessing a mother he had. And he burst out crying and hugged me back. And if you knew the story I tell about him in my book, which I changed the names, he had his wife beat me to a pulp and she got arrested back when I was 20 years old, 1 week after C-section with our second child, when I was married to his brother. And so here I am hugging this guy, and I am feeling more and more, this is, I'm thinking, you don't know it, but you're hugging your dad. And then I hugged the next one, and everyone responded to me, which was, if you know the family history, it was not me at all to be doing this. And it was not them to respond to me at all like this. I went down through hugging them, and and as soon as I hugged them, they started crying. Next one, they started crying. And then I got to my ex, and he said, they're in cleaning Mom up now. Says the kids will go in first. And then he wanted me to go in and say goodbye. And I said, okay. He was very respectful to me. And so then just a few minutes later, I don't know if some of them declined going in, but it seemed like just real soon. He said, okay, you can go see Mom now. And so my daughter-in-law, my son Jeremy's wife, was there. And I said, will you go with me? And I took her by the hand and we went in. And as soon as we went in, there is, let's see, one of his other brothers and his wife and one of his sisters are sitting there across from her. I got her feet across from her where we were. And I went over, I put my hand on her bicep, on her arm, and I said, hi, Mary. You know, she's passed, but I don't know, it was just instinctively. I said, hi, Mary, in my mind. Just put my hand on her. It was like picking up the phone and calling her. She started talking to me right now.
My God.
It was all telepathic, of course, you know, and I'm like, I'm trying to keep a straight face because I know these people are staring at me, you know, the ex-daughter-in-law just come in, what is she doing? And I'm trying to keep a straight face and not go, what the hell, you know? And so I keep my hand on her arm, and she is frantic. She wants me to bring her back. Now, why she thought I could do that, I don't know. I guess because I'm the only one that can communicate with her. But it's just like you pick the phone and say, hey, Mary, what are you doing? That's what it was exactly like. And she's like, she wanted to come back. She wanted to come back. I'm like, I'm telling Poppy, like, no, Mary, you fell. You had a heart attack. You broke your hip. There's nothing here for you but pain. You know, you don't want that surgery. You don't want all this stuff. You know, there's nothing for you here. Just go. I says, isn't Pappy there? Isn't your siblings there? Isn't your parents there? Come on. You got to have somebody there waiting on you. Go. And it was like, oh, I'm all she had. Is what it was felt like. She was just like clutching me. And so I just let go. And it was like hanging up the phone on her. And I turned and walked out. I couldn't tell anybody that. But then later she started showing up at night. And I finally I got up. It's like, well, why am I afraid of her? You know, afraid of ghosts? Yeah, but why am I afraid of her? And so I said, apparently you want to tell me something. And it's kind of embarrassing because I'm with my new husband now, and I'm like with another man in bed, you know. He's married to her son, so I was like, let's go in the other room. And so I got the family Bible, and I said, I'm going to write down what you tell me. And then she showed me a vision, a memory of one day I walked into their house. I was just talking about this like yesterday, and they said, her husband said to me, "You're our Loretta." Loretta was stillborn. I was born in February, and I believe Loretta was born in April, same year. And he looked over, he called his wife Mommy. He says, "Huh, Mommy?" He says, "Me and Mommy talked about it." And he says, "You look like you could be one of our kids, and we love you like you're our daughter. You are our Loretta." And I was like mid-20s at the time. And I looked over at his wife, and they argued, didn't agree on nothing, but she looked at him very serious, and she shook her head, yes. I turned and walked out. I scoffed at him. I thought, this nuts. Thought they lost their mind. He had never talked like that before. And he was so dead serious. But this is the memory she showed me. And I felt him there too, but it's like she was more forward than him. And I wrote it down in my Bible, what I saw, what I experienced. I wouldn't believe me if I would have heard this stuff 20 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. Well, no, because it would happen more than 10 years ago. Until it happened to me, I wouldn't have believed it if somebody would have told me. I thought, oh, you're telling big old stories. You know, but until it happens to you, I mean, then it does. And it's like, I get it now. It's not all made up. I'm sure law is made up, but it's not all made up.
No, it's not all made up. No, it's not. And it's, but it's valuable what you're doing here. It's valuable.
And even my ex's family, because she kept coming to me after that, his mom, she wanted me to tell them what I experienced with her after she passed. And I would argue with her in the living room, like I'm going crazy or something. I was like, I am not going to. Your kids don't like me. I'm not going to go looking like I'm crazy. They're going to call me a liar. I'm not doing that. Just a couple years ago, I was at Kroger's, and one of my ex-sister-in-laws works there. And we were talking about my book that had come out, and I had been on Dr. Oz. And so it was the first time I talked to one of his family about any of this. And she was working in the meat department. We're sitting here talking over the meat counter, and people trying to get meat, and we're like in this conversation. And she said she believed me. And her son, she said one of her sons had been in a bad car wreck, and I'd heard about it, but I didn't know any really details. I knew he was okay. And he saw Pappy, his grandpa. He saw him. And so there she had confirmation from him, because he was so adamant about what he said to him and that he saw him, you know, kind of like my experiences with Mary.
Right.
And so she didn't blink an eye. I mean, she believed me. And I thought, well, I would have never guessed that. I would have thought they would say, don't talk about my mother. Don't be telling your crazy stories, you know, leave our family out of it. You know, that kind of thing. You never know.
Well, it's, you don't know. And it's, one of the things that started to come as, you know, I remained alive and I started, into my healing work. It went from my massage therapy into a deeper, energy, soul healing type of work. And it doesn't happen all the time. It happens when it's supposed to. But I've had people that have crossed over will come into the session, whether it's a table work or whether it's, you know, whether it's a reading. I call it a soul reflection reading. And now just, you know, being able to only work with people over the phone or on Zoom, and their loved one will come in with a message and let them know, as well as their guides, other guides, or others that are a part of there to be there to help with them healing. But it's always an honor when it's somebody's family member that has crossed over comes in and says, okay, I'm here and I have a message for you. So
I was telling a medium yesterday some of my experiences, and she said, well, why aren't you a medium? I said, because I don't control it. It comes in as it wants. I don't bring it. The only time I brought it is I was trying with my husband you heard of Dr. Alan Botkin and his after-death communication, induced after-death communication. He has a little book and he shows how to do it. And he started out with, with vets. It was a technique that he started working with vets, and he accidentally changed a little technique with the eye movements. And he realized they were having like a near-death experience and they were healed in the one session. Dr. Alan Botkin. And I'm a big believer in it. So I got his book, and it's just a little book. And in the back, it tells step by step how to do it. So I took down notes and I wrote down everything, and I tried it on my husband. That stuff works. I saw his brother as in like maybe I say 17, 20 years old, running through a wheat field, big blue sky behind him. And I looked over at my husband, and of course I don't say a word in the world. I just saw. And his brother died when he was 5. And then my husband started crying. He said, "That's my brother." He saw him as 5 years old. He remembered him very vividly as before he passed. And
last name is Botkin?
Botkin.
K-N, okay.
Alan Botkin. And it's IADC, Induced After Death Communication. You get that book and you follow them techniques, I'm telling you, that works.
Okay.
And then people have asked me to do it with their dad and their mom and stuff that's passed. And I was like, I'm not going to, because they follow me, like my ex-mother-in-law, you know, and then I don't want that on me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want people popping in if I'm in the hallway.
That was a possibility that started to reveal itself after the spiritual awakening. I was like, oh no, I don't want to go there. No, that's something I don't want to do. But there's so well, my goodness, I wish we could meet in person.
I just heard something.
Okay.
When I told you I don't want to bring him into me, I just heard they're already there.
Mm.
I don't know. As I'm getting older, it's all getting stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if this is, you know, for everybody as they get older, that you get closer to home. That I don't want to say that you can almost smell it, but you know what I mean? Like there's
Right.
Like the beach. You can smell the beach before you get there.
Right. Right. It's they're already there. Oh my goodness. So it's well, for me, this has just been a developing thing ever since 1989. And then it started really popping in 1993. And that was 4 really intense years with Robin and I of things opening up, because his ability to see angels was amazing. His ability to see energy was something. Yeah.
And he was going home.
Yeah. And he did. He eventually did in 1998. But he's been with me.
I held something back from you as you were talking, and I was like, I don't know if I want to go there, but I guess would be like, if you want to call it, a drunken suicide attempt. I was 17, and I had got back with a guy I was engaged with that my parents made me break up with the day we got engaged. And I was like suicidal after that. And I finally got over him. And I was out walking in the woods and praying and, like, you know, asking God for guidance. And I was given this guidance of steps I needed to do to get my independence for my senior year. And I was also told, first of all, you need to get over Mike. That was his name. So I went right home and I called him. Now here's like 18 months of crying over this guy, being suicidal over this guy. And never once dawned on me calling until then. So I called him and he answered the phone right away. And you want to go out? And I'm like, sure. And so we started seeing each other. And we took a friend of mine and a friend of his with us. And I went to ironically to the high river, and we were swimming. It was at night and we'd been drinking. And ironically, it was almost directly right across from the pond where I drowned when I was 5, where he took
Oh.
me. And I was drinking, having a great time, having fun, was swimming. Me and him were hanging out, and him and my friend and his friend hooked up. And some things was said to me about the breakup, some kind of blame or something. And next thing I know, I have climbed a tree. I was like 80 pounds, and I'm way out on a limb over top the water, like that. Like, I remember thinking about it. I just know suddenly I was there. And in that moment, I almost remembered the drowning, because I didn't remember the drowning until after my 25-year-old NDE, like a month after that or something, or 2. But in that moment, I just felt something very familiar of being from up in that height and over water. I felt a closeness to God or heaven or it. I felt very close, a comfort way out on that limb. And I wasn't thinking about suicide, but he accused me if that's what he thought, that's what I was doing. I just climbed up that tree, and I don't know why I did it, but once I was up there, he was saying I was suicidal. But I didn't think I was until I got up there, and I felt in this in-between space, like I wanted to go beyond. So I guess maybe I was suicidal. But we got back in the car, and he had a T-top Trans Am, and he drove as fast as that thing would go. You want to kill yourself? Fine, kill us both, and carried on. But I broke up with him after that. We both changed. But I kept thinking of that when you were talking about you drinking and suicide, because you can just kind of, the alcohol puts you in a different state, and then you feel relaxed, and then it just takes the right straw that broke the camel's back at the right or wrong time, not right, but the wrong time, to make a horrible mistake.
It was one sentence. Why don't you just F off and die?
And
Bam.
a friend of mine, he tells his story of his NDE. He was a young man, and his mom that threw him in a trash can when he was a baby. Now he's a young man, and he was thinking about suicide anyway. And she happened to call, and he hadn't talked to her in like forever, and started running her mouth at him and said, like, you never were my kid. I never wanted you. Like, his mean things. He just opened up the car door and boom. And that's what he named his book, was Boom. And he had his near-death experience. He just like, hell with it. I'm done. I'm out of here. Boom. Yeah.
Life is fragile. Where we're at on our mental state is fragile, and there can be those limits. We just can't take any more, and it happens. And there was a friend of mine. You've heard of Ho'oponopono, the healing Ho'oponopono. It's a Hawaiian. There was a psychologist that was he was put into the ward for the criminally insane. And so, and he not once, I mean, there's a lot more to it, but I'm going to make it short. So he never once saw a patient face to face. Instead, this is Ho'oponopono is, I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. He sat there with every chart, and he said that with every chart again and again and again and again. And slowly, one by one, the patients healed, the patients left, and the ward was closed. That is the powerful healing of Ho'oponopono. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Again and again and again from your heart. And a friend of mine, she said that she had laid in bed at night, and she went through every year of her life and said that from the time she was born until the age she was. Well, I laid in my bed and I did that one night, and I realized that it was a precarious time from the time I was 2 till I was 5, because they didn't know why, but I would suddenly just jump into high fevers. I went into convulsions once. They swaddled me up, I think I was 2, and they gave me a blood transfusion. They didn't know why. And part of it is there was a part of me not knowing if I wanted to stay, if I wanted to be here. Did I really want to sign up for this? Did I really want to be with this family? I mean, it wasn't terribly violent or anything like that, but still, it was, do I really want to do this life? So, and when I was 5, they discovered I had a staph infection that had settled in my throat. So anytime I got a rhinovirus, just a small little cold, man, it would just flare up into high fevers and really sick. I had an awful lot of alcohol baths, had an awful lot of cool baths, and going to the emergency room. So, but that whole Pono, and then it went on from there. It's interesting to do that. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you every year of your life. It is very revealing. For me, it was very revealing. So.
Wow. Yeah, when I was a baby in a baby bed, I had said, God, you sent me to the wrong family. And I waited to be switched. I'm still here.
I'm glad you're still here. So,
well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your heart and your stories and your gifts.
thank you. Thank you for having this platform, for having this platform for, especially, for people that, it has been attempted suicide and you came back. So.
Yeah. For me, when I had an incident years ago from Ambien, I guess, but what I did afterwards was I promised myself I would never do that to my family. Because someone asked me what you had said earlier, how could you do that to your children? And someone actually said that to me, and Buddy, it hit me hard. And I think, oh my gosh, I can see now what it would have done. But in that moment, which I was under the influence of Ambien, but I felt I had a right. I felt I was at the end of the road. that God knew I couldn't take one more step. And this is like, I'm parking it. I'm done.
We break. We. That's why I say, it's, we can only take so much. And no, not everybody's going to go down the road of attempted suicide. But other people, maybe you wind up being an alcoholic, a drug addict, or just walking away. I mean, we have limits, but there's only so much that a person can take hold or be burdened with. We're human. And then it's the thing of you put the life preserver on for yourself, and you learn how to let go of the toxic people, and you learn to love your life, and you love yourself.
Yeah, because there are people out there that will love you. You don't have
Absolutely.
to settle for the ones that hate you and want you to die. Give your love to people that can return it, because we all have to be loved in return.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
It's good to see you. I hope to see you again. We'll
Yeah,
visit another time. I'd like that. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Take care. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.